Hi, I'm Avery Trufelman, and maybe you can relate to this. There's so many great podcasts out there, but it's impossible to listen to them all. That's why I'm so happy to be the host of Hark Daily, a new way to hear the best moments from the best podcast conversations. Each weekday morning, you'll hear 5 captivating clips from amazing podcasts on the day's news, culture, and so much more, all in 20 minutes. And it's totally free. Check it out at harkdaily.com.
We did a Mexico issue. We got to Puebla. We went to the place where they grind spices for mole, and we just said to people, like, can we come home with you? You know, we would do that all the time, and so that we could get everything done right there. You know, we had the photographer there, we had the writer there, and we just made the story up on the fly.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Matt Rodbard. Betsy Andrews is a James Beard Award-winning journalist and edited at Saveur magazine during some of the magazine's most fruitful years. She's been traveling the Central California coast and staying with family there since childhood, which is the topic of the terrific book she co-authored with the chef Scott Clark. It's called Coastal, 130 Recipes from a California Road Trip, and it's such a wonderful read. On this episode, we talk about how she turned road tripping into a colorful book. We also dig into Betsy's journalism career, reviewing restaurants for the New York Times and her work at Saveur. And at the top of the show, it's the return of 3 things, where Eliza and I talk about what is exciting us in the world of restaurants, cookbooks, and the food world as a whole. Eliza, we're back with 3 things. How are you?
I'm good, Matt. How are you?
Good. You want to start?
Yeah, I want to tell you about this incredible salad that I had that I've made twice since eating it.
So this is a DIY Eliza salad.
Yeah, well, okay, so I was over at my friend Pearl Jones for dinner, and she has been really into, Pearl's a great food stylist, and she's been really into finding recipes on TikTok. So she sent me a couple of TikToks to decide what we wanted to make for dinner. One of them was this pistachio salad that, like, if the best part of a salad is normally the nuts, which for me, that's always the highlight, like, this dressing makes the whole salad a nut is kind of how I would explain it. It's, we found it in this TikTok from this woman, Catherine Wants, but she says that she was originally inspired from the restaurant Luca in Williamsburg. It's basically a dressing where you blend Parmesan and pistachios with a little bit of olive oil in a food processor until you get this, like, almost tahini-like pistachio butter dressing. We added some lemon juice as well. And then you toss it in with shaved fennel and apple that you can just do on a mandolin really quickly. But you get this really, like, nutty, creamy, cheesy dressing that just kind of coats everything. And it was so good when we made it together that immediately the next day I went out and, like, bought everything to make it again.
So great. I like having a signature salad. It's very important.
Yeah, and I love a shaved apple fennel salad. That's something that I do pretty often. But this is definitely the best one I've tried. And it's thanks to this dressing, and I'm definitely excited to swap in sugar snap peas or carrots, like other summer vegetables, as that gets underway, because I think this pistachio dressing is kind of the star.
My first thing, I have been sent some products over the past year from Damian Primus of Primus Foods, and honestly, he's recently rebranded these Greek products, and I'm extremely excited to talk about them. The one that really captured me was his pastelli, which is a Cretan sesame brittle. You can think of it as like those little cool sesame snacks you would get at the health food store, but really flat. And he's importing these just the most beautiful sesame products, and it has Greek honey in it. And at the end of a really savory meal, like when I'm cooking with like umami soy sauce, and I just crave something sweet to offset it, I think a couple of pastelli bites is just such a perfect pairing. But also he's doing pizza oil and natural flaky salts. And I think if you're interested in cooking with Greek products, he's really got a great line to Greece when he's importing. And again, that's Primus Foods. And just love Damian. I love what he's doing.
Yeah, I think that sounds delicious. And I'll do another kind of product moment for my second thing. I have maybe 8 kinds of instant noodles in my pantry at any time. Like, that's something I'm always kind of amassing and eating and bringing in. But recently I got sent some of the Momofuku noodles, and I think their scallion soy noodles are really good. They're a knife cut style noodle that's air dried, not fried. So it has this really toothsome, like satisfying texture. And they make them in partnership with Asha, which is a big like Taiwanese dried noodle brand. So I've been enjoying kind of using that as a canvas for lunch this week. And, I'll add like a jammy egg if I'm making it for Shirley because I'm not an egg girly, or chili crisp, or quick pickled cucumber, some kind of vegetable addition. But I've really been enjoying this kind of noodle canvas to play with.
Momo, those guys, their CPG, they're on it, and I've enjoyed many of their noodle products. I remember back in the day at Whole Foods just buying those ramen kits that they did early on, and I think they do terrific work. I haven't had this product though, so
I'll bring you one. They're good.
Yeah, I'd love to check it out.
What's your next thing?
My next thing is I was up at Fancy Bagels in Kingston, and I was checking out their drink selection, which is really nice. And this place I've talked about before, just great bagels and sandwiches, and they do this pomme dauphine with creme fraiche and fish eggs. Really delicious spot. I mean, they're really doing great bagels. But I was hipped to this NA cider that I had not heard about. It's from Rose Hill Farm, which is up in Red Hook, New York, in the Hudson Valley. This is a family-run orchard. It was founded in 1798. It's an old-school place, and they're known for their ferments collection, doing a lot of like ciders, and they have a whole wine roster with grapes from the Hudson Valley and Long Island. But this NA sparkling can, great branding, and I just loved it. It was not too sweet. It was really refreshing. Great. It went down great with the bagel sandwich, and I want to check it out. I hope it's in New York City. I'd love to see it at like local bodega and pick it up. But for an NA, if you're going to a house party and you want to bring something fun for NA, I would recommend it. It's Rose Hills Farm Sparkling NA Cider.
Yeah, it sounds delicious.
So great. What's your next thing?
My last thing is I went to a preview for a new musical last night. It's called The Last Bimbo of the Apocalypse.
You told me a little bit of this on Slack. Let me hear about it.
It's about an iconic photo that maybe people listening will recognize, which is a photo of Britney Spears, Lindsay Lohan, and Paris Hilton in the backseat of a car that the New York Post, I believe, and a bunch of other tabloids in the era put on their covers with the headline, The Three Bimbos of the Apocalypse. And it was this kind of very iconic moment in early 2000s tabloid culture, really tearing down these pop fixtures that I think have since been kind of uplifted and reclaimed by society today. And the premise of the musical is that a bunch of like Gen Z internet sleuths realize that there is a fourth person in the photo because they see like an extra hand in the car, and they go down this whole rabbit hole of trying to figure out who the missing bimbo of the apocalypse was in that photo, and like what it means to be like missing from society and reclaimed. And it's just very fun, as that maybe would sound to people.
Sounds great. And it's a musical.
It's musical.
How's the music?
The music is very catchy. Yeah. I left it, like right now I have one of them stuck in my head. And, I was at like the last night of previews, so it's opening soon. I think hopefully it'll be running for a while. If people are coming to New York and if you're a fan of early 2000s pop culture, or you just want to see the kind of musical you probably can't see anywhere else, Last Bimbo of the Apocalypse.
Love the recommendation. It gives a lot of mystery show, early podcast. I don't know if you checked that one out.
Yeah.
It gives it like, trying to spot like a missing hand in a photo is.
Yeah, it's like if you like internet rabbit holes and also songs that you can't get out of your head, it's a very high energy show. Like I found myself kind of exhausted by the end of it because all of the performers are really going for it. And there's a lot of just very pop culture references and discourse, but it was definitely a good time.
It's in previews now, and it's off-Broadway?
It's off-Broadway, but very close.
So what's the theater?
It's at the Signature Theater Company on 42nd down by 10th Ave. So off-Broadway, but not too far, and it's opening soon, so I think it should be up for a little while, hopefully.
Love the theater rack. I love it.
It's like spring, summer in New York. There's a lot of things opening, a lot of things to do. What's your last thing?
My last thing is we're working on a piece on Taste. It'll be up in a couple weeks about tinned fish, and really there's just a lot of launches happening, and I can't wait to run this piece because there's just a lot happening in that world. I think we're post this moment that you discovered tinned fish is a thing, and pandemic, a lot of folks were buying it. But I just want to call out one new product that was sent to me. I've been sent several tins, and I just love the way that these offer you such a great opportunity as a home cook just to crack a tin and cook with it with pasta, or bring it out for an appetizer and serve it with crackers, or just eat it out of the can. So this is a new one. It's called Nice Cans, which, nice name. It's from Charlotte Langley. And Charlotte's a chef from Canada and kind of a CPG founder. I think she has an incubator / her own company where she's helping founders, get to the grocery store. I'll paraphrase that. But I love these products. She's focusing on sardines with her first two releases, and she's using European methods with the production. She does one in tomato and with tomato and peppers, and she does one just straight up smoked sardines in olive oil and salt. So I like those two styles of conservas, and the name is really great. Nice Cans. It's from Charlotte Langley. Really cool stuff.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing your 3 things.
You too.
Hey, podcast listeners. I'm Chris Morocco, food director of Bon Appetit and Epicurious, and host of the Dinner SOS podcast. Each week on the show, we bring the expertise of the Bon Appetit test kitchen to your kitchen. And this season, we've got a little something for everyone. We're debating whether spring produce is actually worth all the hype, solving your hosting anxieties, and helping you become a better baker with our BA Bake Club episodes on Dinner SOS.
As the summer travel season approaches, I'm excited to let you know about 2 upcoming Taste Travels, our immersive travel series hosted by cookbook authors and me, Matt Rodbard. On June 15th, I will be joining the Mediterranean dish author Suzy Karache in Barcelona for an incredible week of culinary tours, cooking classes, and plenty of wine and jamon. And on September 15th, I will be joining author and baker Mauricio Leo of The Perfect Loaf for a tour of northern Italy. We will visit artisanal Parmigiano Reggiano and balsamic vinegar producers, take a masterclass in the art of panettone, and of course, eat plenty of stuffed pasta and mortadella in and around Emilia-Romagna. Both trips are nearly sold out and closing soon. If interested, write into hello@tastecooking.com and we will get you the information. That's hello@tastecooking.com. I hope to see you on one of our taste travels this summer. Betsy Andrews, welcome to This Is Taste. It's great to see you.
Thank you. It's so good to see you too, Matt.
I've respected your journalistic career for a long time, and you really have an incredible, I would say, resume, LinkedIn. You've been doing this for a minute, and you've written some terrific things.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, I want to get into it first. You live in New York, so Betsy, where do you go out? What do you like to eat right now?
Oh man, so. I think over the years, the food has only gotten better and more diverse. It's kind of an amazing trajectory. And, it's the proliferation of cuisines is incredible. What I'm really interested in is restaurants that seem to do a really good job, given how hard the economic model is, to make something delicious and also affordable. So, I'm thinking of Sendo, for instance.
Yeah.
The Edo, sushi place and Nomad. You get half an hour, 40 minutes, to eat your set, and there are people kind of breathing down here.
Yeah.
But the food is so good, so fresh, creative, comes out fast, and it's $33 to $48 for a set of sushi, which is kind of unbelievable. So that I think is really great. I also, because of this cookbook in particular, I learned so many techniques, and I really got an appreciation for things like fermentation and the ways that is used, to bring flavor, and for marination and for preservation. And so I think there are some restaurants now that you see a lot of that. For instance, Wayward Fare.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Chef Akhtar Nawab's place.
Yeah. A real legend in the game, Akhtar Nawab.
Yeah, totally. And that place, talking to him about what he's doing there, and the food comes out and it's delicious, and you don't need to think about it, you just need to crush it.
Yeah.
But he's done all these gorgeous things to it that have come from many different culinary traditions to get it to your plate.
Yeah. Well, I had to ask that question because you held this amazing role. You were the 25 and under columnist at the New York Times from 2008 to 2012. A really important time when I think food became really important to a wide audience. This is like the birth of the celebrity chef in some ways. And you're writing this column that took you around New York in a way that I think now we take for granted, the way that outer borough, big air quotes, is covered. And really we now know because of TikTok and because of a lot of other sources where to go in deep Queens and et cetera. But back then in 2008, Betsy, you're the one telling us where to go. Talk about that era of your career and just like scouring the city for these 25 and unders.
Yeah. So, our job was to uncover delicious and affordable food. And there were like 4 columnists, actually, and we would rotate, and as you're saying, nowadays, everybody does that. But at the time, no one did it. And at the New York Times, those restaurants, which we still called ethnic at the time.
I know, right?
Or the burger joints and, those places, the meatball shop, the lobster roll joints, those places were not considered, of the caliber that you would put into the main column. But, we wanted to tell people about them. So yeah, I mean, it was a really fantastic time because I got to really dive in and see the entire, city of food. I mean, I spent like 6 months eating on Staten Island.
Yeah.
And I found it one of the most ethnically diverse in terms of cuisine, like one of the most culinarily diverse places in the city. Those Sri Lankan places like La Caruana and Nuasha, those places are still total go-tos.
Very much so.
So it was always this really wonderful discovery. But I think the part of what changed was that when Pete went from being the section editor, Pete Wells, who was my boss as a section editor, or my editor, then he became the columnist, and he really brought those restaurants into the column.
Yeah.
So, now it's all over social media, those restaurants, but they ended up also being, like legitimized in the Gray Lady,
Yeah, and now when you read, Pete's top 100 restaurants of New York, there is no dividing line 25 and under versus full review, which is you'd say it's a better way of doing things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But Betsy, is there a memorable review that you made where you really just uncovered a restaurant and it got quite popular, it blew up, or just like in writing about a cuisine that you think was really special at that time?
Yeah. So, I'll tell you that still my favorite piece for the New York Times was actually not for $25 and under. It was the first piece I ever wrote for the Times, and it was called United Plates of New Jersey. I am a poet, and my first book of poetry was an anti-war meditation on the New Jersey Turnpike. And after I wrote that book, I thought to myself, okay, and it had this refrain in it about the fast food, restaurants on the Turnpike at the rest stops named after famous New Jerseyites. And I thought to myself, well, where do you eat if you're on that Turnpike? So again, I spent like 6 months just getting off at every single exit. Pete did not want that story for the dining section, but there used to be a section called Escapes, which was kind of a weekend travel, second homes section, and it was in that section. And I remember I had the galley of it. They used to send you what they called blads. They would messenger you. Paper copy.
Paper, yeah.
Yeah. And I had it. I was on the subway at like 2:00 in the morning, and I'm reading it. It was 1,700 words, and it was an above-the-fold story. It was huge. And this woman comes up to me, and she says to me, "Oh, do you write for the New York Times?" "I used to write for the New York Times. I'm Dana Bowen. I'm the executive editor of Saveur magazine." And I thought to myself, oh, this is going to come back to me someday.
And it certainly did. What a great segue. Wow, that you met reading the Blad for your first big piece, and you were at that time like hours away from being a New York Times writer, and you meet Dana Bowen. And also in this time at Saveur, and just to frame it, you're writing the column for the Times, but you're executive editor of Saveur from 2009 to 2014. And we did a whole week of Saveur back about a year ago, and had Kat from the new regime, and we had Dorothy from the founding, and we kind of missed your era, and that wasn't intentional. It just happened to be the way we framed it. And I will definitely link to those episodes in the show notes because this is such an important publication in the history of food writing. Talk about your era of Saveur and what you were doing there, especially with some of the special issues. I mean, that's really what your era was known for.
Sure. Actually, I was executive editor from about 2012 to 2014. Yeah. I came in as a senior editor, and I actually had been running a publication at Time Inc. and sort of took a step down to go to my favorite magazine, and then just sort of worked my way up to executive editor. So, one of the issues that was super important to me was the all sandwich issue.
Yeah.
I'm from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And I said to everybody, I'm like, look, if we're going to do a sandwich issue, we need to do a story about Philadelphia. I mean, that is the sandwich city. And so I reached out to my people in Philadelphia, and my brother, who was a real working class guy, a real drive his truck around kind of dude, said to me, he started telling me all these places to go. And he said to me, it's been a lifetime of eating things wrapped in paper while standing up.
What a well said.
Poetry
runs in your family.
So Todd Coleman and I went down there, spent 2 days, driving around with my brother and stuffing our faces on Philly cheesesteaks and hoagies and, roast pork and then some really sort of more kind of esoteric sandwiches that are Philly traditions. And I wrote the story in my brother's voice and gave him the byline.
Beautiful. That's incredible that you get to do that. Tell me, what are editorial meetings like with the staff? I mean, we have so many folks who are now leadership in food media and at that time, and a real incubator of ideas. And I think what we do at Taste, I said this during their episodes before, we're really inspired by your era of Saveur and even before. It's really something I really admired as somebody coming up in food writing.
Yeah, it was really intense.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Jim ran a pretty intense place.
James Oslin, the editor-in-chief, these were incredibly creative, passionate, and smart people. And sometimes we were had screaming fights, and sometimes we had screaming parties, and we would pull all-nighters. I mean, I hadn't pulled all-nighters since I was in college, and we would just, be there working on that issue to make it as beautiful and perfect as possible. We would be competing with each other for ideas. I mean, it was... I don't know because I haven't been in, an editorial job since then. I don't know if the culture has changed, and I suspect it has because we've gone through many, many, many changes in media. But it was so intense that, it was both addictive and destructive.
Oh, we said at the same time. Yeah. Fair, well said. And I think it's very clear, running a monthly magazine with the pressures of financial, I would say, backing, and I would say you probably had a very difficult time just working in that era because it was the end of magazines in some ways, end of this era where you could do 12 a year, 14 a year. Let me ask you about your colleagues. Who were you working with at the time?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like we should just shout out the team because I think some of the names are wow, that the person is...
Totally. And I will say I learned so much. And it was just, I used those lessons all the time. It was a beautiful thing as well as a traumatic thing. Helen Rosner. Right?
Yeah.
The restaurant critic for The New Yorker. She was our web editor. And then she went on to Eater and basically invented long form food, media online, Hunter Lewis and Karen Shimizu. I am a contributing editor at Food and Wine, and they're my editors there. They're at the top of the masthead. And I think they brought a lot of the lessons from Saveur to bear on that publication. Beth Krakauer and Sarah Karnichevitz, who are, both at Wall Street Journal's off duty. Dana Bowen, who went on to a bunch of different magazine jobs, Rachel Ray and Food and Wine, and then opened the Dynamite Shop, which was a kids' cooking class, and did a book on that. Ben Mims, who was a rock star cookbook writer, his new book, Crumb from Phaedon, is like, just a tour de force of cookie recipes. I could go on. There were a lot of people that came through there, and many of them are my editors now. People who were kids and were interns are now my editors.
Yeah. It's incredible. I mean, thank you for sharing some of those names, and there's many more, and really important publication that you led. Is there a single story that you published during your tenure at Saveur that you really are proud of, that you want to just give a little time for?
Actually, we used to do these little capsules. There were so many
like
stories.
From the book?
No, they would sometimes be peppered throughout the book, particularly if it was a single subject issue, and they were like 100 words, but they would follow the entire arc of a narrative. Can I read you one?
Yeah,
Okay.
I love that you brought this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So this is also from that aforementioned sandwich issue. It's called Golden State of Sandwiches. She wore sunglasses. Her blonde hair was long and wavy. Her skin was burnished deep copper from the sun. When she approached me on the beach that day in Malibu, she wore nothing but a macrame string bikini. Over her shoulder, she carried an ultra suede fringe bag from which she pulled a sandwich. Sprouts, avocado, tomato, and jack cheese, she said, $3. She handed me a plastic baggie containing the ingredients she had assembled herself in her home kitchen and tucked between slices of multigrain bread. I gave her my dollars, and she moved on. But I have never forgotten her. It was 1979. I was 16 years old and newly vegetarian, an East Coaster on holiday from a mother who had taken to clucking, "I just don't know what to feed you now." Back home, the beach was littered with the mustardy ends of hot dog buns sold by sweaty guys in boardwalk stalls. I unwrapped my sandwich and took a bite. The sprouts crunched. The tomato tasted bright. The avocado was creamy and nutty. The waves glistened and curled in the sun. Things sure are different in California, I thought.
I love when you flipped it first. I think it's always a tightrope walk, and really love that image that you painted with your words, and you did a terrific job. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, sure.
Very cool.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
I feel like you can get old Saveurs on eBay, and I suggest just going back. You could go back to the 90s, you could go back to the 2000s, or go back to this era of like 2008 to 2012. The India issue is something that I just think about a lot. We got a little bit of the story behind it on this Saveur week, but that seemed like a wild episode. Tell me a little bit about India issue.
Yeah, so many of us traveled for that issue. Jim asked me where I wanted to go, and I said Kashmir.
Yeah.
There were no Westerners in Kashmir. It was like a military zone. I went through 6 checkpoints getting out of there, and it was the most exquisitely beautiful place I've ever been.
What would you eat there? Was there a dish that
lamb, lots and
lamb.
lots,
Yeah.
and lots of lamb.
Yeah.
We went to a wedding, and there's a particular chef who creates dishes for the wedding. So we had 19 different kinds of lamb dishes.
Wow. Let's talk a minute about photography too, because what Saveur was doing with reportage and documentary style photography, huge influence on my work in cookbooks and writing. And how did you as executive editor work with your photography team, especially with a time when digital was not as common and it's more difficult to produce photography?
Yeah, we did this thing that people don't do so much anymore. We traveled with photographers.
Yeah.
That's hard, because sort of the work you're doing, the work photographers are doing are oftentimes really different. I did the same thing for this cookbook, which we'll talk about. But, I had worked with her before and we had a really good rapport. With some photographers, it's very hard to do that. They just don't want you anywhere near them when they're working, I mean, and their job is exhausting. They're taking 2,000 photographs a day, and you're trying to get somebody's name and they're like, get out of my shot.
Yeah.
So that could be really stressful, but it could also really kind of be a beautiful thing where, as the writer or the producer of the story, essentially we were producing our own stories. We were calling people and we would hit the ground like, I worked with Todd Coleman a number of times. We did a Mexico issue. We got to Puebla. We went to the place where they grind spices. A guy just has a big industrial grinder and he's grinding people's spices for mole. And we just said to people like, can we come home with you? And we found a woman who let us come home with her. And that, we would do that all the time. And so that we could get everything done right there. We had the photographer there, we had the writer there, and we just made the story up on the fly.
It's definitely the way I work and the way I prefer, because when you just send a shot list to photographers 6 months later, it just doesn't have that magic. But it is so much more difficult. You have to find the right photographer who works fast.
Yeah,
it's just about speed.
Yeah.
But yeah, please go back and check out those issues and find them because they're incredible. I want to talk about Coastal. Terrific book. I've given it some serious time, and Betsy, your team, you and the chef Scott Clark have created this kind of document about the Central Coast of California that really tells the story of a region that I would say has become quite popular as a travel destination. We hear all about Central Coast in like travel journalism and some food writing. But first, just tell me a little bit about Scott Clark.
So Scott, I met him because there was a PR person who was, just sort of smartly would send me out to California every year. She would have like one client who had the money, send me out there, and then she would introduce me to all her clients, and I would get some stories out of it. So she told me to see Scott, who was not the guy paying for the trip. Yeah. Scott, and I went and saw him, and he's an East Coast guy, and I'm an East Coast gal, and we both love California, and we started talking about all the little places we love on the Central Coast, and I said, wouldn't it be great to do a road trip story? You surf, we stop at all the little spots, and I said, I know a photographer who's perfect, Cheyenne Ellis. She is a stunt woman. She's a fourth-generation Californian, and Scott's in Half Moon Bay. She was living in Half Moon Bay because her husband is a big wave surfer. He surfs Mavericks. So we had this sort of perfect team. Scott had been a Michelin-starred chef. He worked at Vidalia in D.C., he worked at Restaurant Eve in Alexandria, then he moved to San Francisco, worked at Benu, and he worked at Cezanne. He went through every single basic position at Cezanne, and he became chef de cuisine there, and he just burnt out. Yeah. He had a 5-year-old he was never seeing. He was sick of getting beat up in Michelin kitchens. He was sick of working 80 hours a week. So he he rented a caboose on the side of the Cabrillo Highway in Half Moon Bay and opened this destination, sort of burgers and, sandwich and salads and pie shop.
Very light framing. Much more going on than just burgers. But totally. Betsy, tell me about the geography a little bit, just for our listeners who maybe don't know exactly what the Central Coast is. When you're talking about doing this road trip, what's like the starting point, ending point? What towns are we hitting?
So for us, we started in Half Moon Bay, which is where Scott is, and went down the San Francisco Peninsula. Yeah, sort of Pescadero and then down Monterey and Big Sur, Santa Cruz. SLO County, Santa Barbara County, and out to the Channel Islands to sail, and then back up to Half Moon Bay.
And the book really feels like a road trip. I think the photography, the documentary style, and just the light food styling makes it feel extremely real. And of course, you hit that light. You nailed the light.
Yeah.
I mean, it's terrific.
That's all Cheyenne.
Yeah, Cheyenne is terrific. I'd love to meet Cheyenne because this book it just jumps out of the page. When you're thinking about the recipe list with Scott, and you've got this restaurant, but you've also got this trip to take. How are you thinking about? I mean, the range of cuisines covered in this book really represents California in many ways. The multicultural nature of this incredible state. How do you land on this recipe list? Because you could read it as random, and that's a pejorative term. I'm not calling it that. I'm calling it eclectic and very rad. Like, but you wouldn't expect some of these recipes out of a caboose restaurant, right?
This is the way Scott cooks.
Yeah,
and he his format is necessarily lean and pared down at Dad's, but he's got all these recipes in him. From his many years in these sophisticated restaurant kitchens, and he's inspired by everything. So this is absolutely organic, And we sort of came up with the adventures first. We're like, hey, here's all the things that we love to do on the Central Coast. I mean, it looks like a travelogue because it was a travelogue. We literally went and did everything, and then he would just come up with like all of these recipes to organize around those adventures.
I want to jump into a couple of recipes in particular, and I picked these not at random, but they just kind of maybe have a little anecdote. And two that come to mind. There's the California PBLT, and then the California Muddy Buddies, and that's like puppy chow in the Midwest, but that's a little East Coast speak there. But these two recipes are two of many. But talk about these two dishes that you wrote about.
So both of these come out of some California inspirations for Scott. The California PBLT is a bacon, lettuce, tomato, and pineapple sandwich. And
pineapple. Let's just pause for a second.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Very, very cool. Adding pineapple to it.
Cool, and it's like a grilled pineapple,
Yeah.
So he, in college, went on like a trip to San Diego, and there was a place called Hodad's there, and it was doing the bacon the way that he does it here, which is you grind it up and you make a smash burger out of it. So, but this is Scott's cooking, so it's all scratch cooking. So if you do it all yourself, you are making the bacon, right? You are oven drying the tomatoes for this oven dried tomato mayo. There's a lot of sort of and then to make the mayo, you're making this umami, the umami oil. Then to make the mayo that we make, I mean, it's a sort of continually receding thing. But you can also, if you need to,
use regular mayo.
Yeah,
right
and use regular bacon and do the same technique. But it's also, so this is a paean to Southern California, but it's also about the tomatoes of the Central Coast. Has both fresh tomatoes and these jammy, delicious oven-dried tomatoes on it.
Beautiful. And about the Muddy Buddies, what's the California spin there?
Yeah, so this is in the road trip snacks chapter. This is Muddy Buddies. His East Coast mom would make these for him and his brother, to kind of keep them quiet in the back of the car when they were driving around. But when he was at a restaurant, one of the chefs had left white chocolate in the sous vide machine for a really long time, and it had turned almost like black. And it was really savory. And so he makes his Muddy Buddies with that and tahini and almond butter, almonds being a major crop in California, to make a super savory version of Muddy Buddies that also is sweet, but is balanced.
Yeah, I love that, using almond butter. I never thought about that with this dish that I make every holiday season. I just love making it. And it's cool. And the Saison resume comes out in a lot of these recipes. Yeah. Your skill is really to make it for the home cook, and it really is cookable. It's not multi-page recipes here. It's very smartly written. One other recipe, the kimchi opino, which I've written some Korean books, and I just have never seen this application, and I think it's really smart. He worked at Bennu, so he obviously had some a real incredible Korean background in that cooking style. But tell me about this a little bit.
He also was for a while the R&D, the recipe, the research and development chef
at
Saison.
Saison, yeah.
So he did all the fermentations.
Yeah.
And he's really, really into them. Yeah, the kimchi pinot. So this recipe to me, like, absolutely exemplifies his cooking. It's super smart, super funny.
Yeah.
And a paean to both the 19th century Italian Genoese fishermen, immigrants to San Francisco, and Korean immigrants to San Francisco. So in that sense, it's this love letter to kind of the Bay Area, and it's super, super delicious. There are all these techniques, so you use sort of his techniques to make this gorgeous fumet, this gorgeous fish stock, and you make the kimchi. You don't have to make the kimchi, but if you make the kimchi, it's just so much more gratifying. And then you're adding all this seafood in there. If you're from California, you're using spiny lobster or you're using Dungeness crab. But we give you substitutions. If you're on the East Coast, you might want to use an American, lobster, or you might want to use blue crabs. Or you can even I've used snow crabs a number of times. And it's so crushable and delicious. The person who cross-tested this for us, who is a former chef and a good friend of mine, has made it many, many times since because they were just sort of blown away by it. It takes a few days. Like, if you make the fumet, and I mean, it doesn't take a few days, but it's a commitment.
Yeah, if you're making fish stock, you can always make a bunch and
then
keep
put
it
away.
Freeze it away. Yeah.
Exactly. There's a lot of that in the book. Anyway, it's a bit of a meditation, and then it's just so delicious.
Cool. Well, I want to also ask you about, getting on the boat, because there's a whole section. And I think, like, when you think about cookbooks, you're like, oh, we should do a boat section. Now, I've thought about it. It's really hard to photograph on a boat. It feels a little, like, abstract if you don't own a boat. But you've really you created this universe of, like, cooking on a boat. And one of the recipes that really stuck out is a sea-blanched broccoli. Betsy, tell me about just, like, writing this recipe literally sea-blanched. It's super cool.
So the reason this chapter works so well is this is absolutely from real life. My partner's family keeps a boat in Ventura, and we sail out to the Channel Islands every year to go scuba diving. The sea urchin and the scallops in that chapter, her uncle and me, we dove for those. Scott, caught the rockfish and the mackerel. The seawater blanched broccoli is actually a recipe from my partner's father.
Yeah.
He would just like pull up a pot of seawater and overcook the broccoli in it.
I know. It's like that. It's basically that.
Yeah. And I told Scott about it, and he turned it into like this gorgeous banchan, basically.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to make. You can make it at home. You just make like pasta water, you just make a real salty, boil for your broccoli, blanch it really quickly, and then a little sesame oil and sesame seed, and it's perfect.
It's a terrific section, and now hearing your connection to it as well is really special. I love this book. I think it's one of my favorites of the season, and I just love the work you put into it. It's beautiful. Let me ask you about just traveling to the Central Coast. We have many listeners who are planning their summer travels or spring travels even. Where are we staying? I mean, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. Like, what is there a town or an area that we should Google first?
Yeah, you should definitely go visit Morro Bay.
Yeah.
Absolutely go to Morro Bay. Get a kayak at the kayak shack and kayak in that estuary. It is, has one of the like largest gatherings of birds in the world. Migrating birds. It's incredibly biodiverse and rich. If you go over to Morro Rock, which is sacred to the Chumash, you can see the otters there in the water. And then on the other side, which of the rock, which, there's bay on one side and the other side is waves, and you can watch the surfers. And then there's the Embarcadero, where you can go to Morro Bay Oyster Company and get some just delicious oysters that are farmed out in the estuary. So definitely Morro Bay. You can stay in Cambria, which is a surfing town in SLO, and they've got, kind of like a really nice boutique-y hipster hotel there to stay in.
Yeah. What I knew you'd come with a rec, like really specific rec. And that's how I'd ask you as a friend. So thank you for sharing that. And what about Scott's restaurant?
So Dad's is open 4 days a week.
Okay.
It is a total destination. He likes to say that it's a vegetarian restaurant with a hamburger. He likes to put a lot of vegetables on plates there. And maybe the most famous thing is his maitake sandwich.
Wow.
Which is just butter griddled maitake, cheese, tomato, pickled onion, butter lettuce, and his special dad sauce.
I love it. And the recipe is like mushroom or burger.
Yeah.
Kind of like you can flip it either way. It's really smart. It makes me think about going to the farmer's market, buying some maitake and doing a full burger. I love it. Betsy, and this is Taste Biz. Guess about the discerning taste. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire, fast and furious taste check. Are you ready?
Yes.
The best fruit.
Mangosteen.
Tell me about this a little bit. What makes it good?
Oh, it's so floral and so juicy and sweet. Not easy to find in the United States. For a long time, it was illegal.
Yeah.
And now you can get them. They're going to be expensive, but it's worth it.
Where do you find them?
Chinatown?
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yep. Find your Chinatown. Support your Chinatown. Buy some mangosteens. The worst vegetable.
Any that's sprayed with synthetic pesticides.
Hard to come by or not. Disagree.
What?
Unsprayed vegetables.
Almost every vegetable. Any vegetable that's not organic
I
is
know.
sprayed.
Yeah, so just buy that organic vegetable. Okay, it's a question, but I've never had that answer. So thank you for pointing that out. Do you have a typical breakfast?
Leftovers.
All right, so you're a doggy bag person.
Yeah.
For restaurants or just leftovers from cooking?
Doggy bag person from restaurants because I don't like food waste.
Yeah.
And also I cook all the time.
Yeah.
I literally had eggplant parmesan for breakfast this morning.
God bless you. What a great breakfast. Homemade sauce, I imagine?
No. That was from a restaurant because I was with my mother in Philadelphia.
Oh, cool. The best dessert?
In summer, a really, really juicy ripe peach. And in winter, a really, really juicy ripe pear.
Oh, yeah, pears. Is there a variety of pear that you seek out?
I mean, I kind of like any pear.
Yeah.
I like a juicy Bosque.
Yeah, those are great. I really wanted to ask you this one because you've covered New York for so long and you have seen many restaurants come and go. Betsy, is there a restaurant you wish you could bring back from the dead?
Nick and Eddie.
Tell me about it.
Nick and Eddie was on the corner of Sullivan Street and Spring Street. It was a celebrity, sort of hotspot. Everybody came there. But it was really kind of down-home food. Literally Johnny Depp and Kate Moss would be eating mashed potatoes and meatloaf.
Okay.
It was kind of a wild scene. And my girlfriend at the time worked there. I had a lot of friends who worked there, and I spent umpteen nights there at the bar. It spawned, actually, an empire because the Brombergs, Bruce and Eric Bromberg, were the chefs.
Oh.
They moved across the street, opened Blue Ribbon, and, the
energy transferred to Blue Ribbon and it became quite the legendary hotspot as well.
Where I spent so many of my, I was a waitress and a bartender in New York for a long time. I would just go and spend all my money at Blue Ribbon and we would watch the sun come up in Soho all the time.
What's your most memorable bartending job?
Let's see. Oh, God. I worked at a place in Philadelphia where it was so bad, this place, that I bartended, waited tables, and bussed the entire restaurant. And one day, a rat crawled out of a wall, expired in the dining room floor. The owner came out, swept it into a paper bag, walked away, and didn't comp anybody anything.
Yeah.
That was a short-lived job.
I want to, you gotta write some of these stories down if you haven't already. It's so good. Couple more. Your favorite city outside America to visit for food?
Tokyo.
Great. How do you do Tokyo?
Oh, man. It's really interesting because Michelin started paying attention. So, there's a Michelin-starred tonkatsu place. There's a Michelin-starred ramen place. One of my favorite places to go is actually for drinking. It's Gen Yamamoto.
Mm-hmm.
It's a ginza fruit cocktail. You go for a cocktail omakase. You get 4 drinks or 8 drinks. It sounds like a lot, but those are really low ABV, and they're focused on the fresh product. It's amazing.
How do you get the reservation at Gem? Seems hard. Yeah. You're giving me that I'm a writer face.
Yeah.
It's fair. No, I'm kidding. I put you on the spot there. But yeah, Gem is incredible. I've been able to have a drink there. Last one, your favorite sandwich.
Well, as I said, I am a Philly girl.
Yeah.
But I am not. I'm going to betray my hometown and not say cheesesteak or roast pork.
Oh, wow.
Broccoli rub. I am going to say muffuletta.
Oh, but so in New Orleans.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Why do you like it so much?
It's got mortadella on it, man.
Yeah. And the good stuff, too.
Yeah, so good. And also, like, it sits there marinating and sweating,
Yeah.
Oh, it's really... I mean, it defies what a lot of Americans think, which is that you can't leave a sandwich out. You can't leave the cold cuts out. Yeah,
I mean, how many times have you gone to Central Grocery and then had that in your packing, in your carry-on?
Well, you know what? One time I went and I didn't have time to go to Central Grocery, and I got on the plane and somebody opened their muffuletta on the plane, and I was like, damn you.
Do you have I mentioned Central, it's the famous place, but is that
absolutely.
That's the one you go to?
Yeah.
Please come back. I'd love to talk to you more. This is such a pleasure. Thank you, Betsy Andrews. Thank you for joining This Is Taste.
Thank you so much.
This Is Taste is hosted and produced by Eliza Barbanel and me, Matt Rodbard. The show is edited by lead producer Clayton Gumbert and supervised by Pat Stango, Director of Media Production and Development at Penguin Random House. Thanks to Shalia Harris and the production team at Penguin Random House. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Logo and guest illustrations by Ellie Skurzat. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter to keep updated on all cool things in the world of taste.